Hello, everybody. My name is Player Negative, and today we're talking about Disney. Disney. So you're probably wondering why I don't normally talk about it enough, unless you're talking about Kingdom Hearts. And the reason that is pretty simple. Disney has been in shambles recently. From a bunch of business controversies to literally preventing a kid with cancer from being able to have Spider-Man on his gravestone as his dying wish, to multiple lawsuits and the fact that most of their movies are bad, the Disney adults. I could go on forever, but even I get tired of hating on stuff. And even I get tired of a certain somebody constantly acting like I'm an idiot while they sit there in denial and act like everything's peachy keen. Well, today I'm going to talk about Disney in a different light. And I know probably some of you are asking, well, if Disney's doing so bad, what's so positive you got to talk about? Well, it's quite simple. The side stuff. You see, Disney's a big corporation, sure, but they always let something good slip through the cracks. Despite the bad corporate suits and the people who have keys to the kingdom that have been screwing up stuff like Star Wars and Marvel, there's at least been a few talented people who's been able to pull off something interesting. So, with that being said, today we're going to talk about multiple different side projects made by the Disney company that restored my hope back into what Disney could be if it's run by someone different, or if it's bought after it probably crumbles to the ground, the good that could be built from its ashes. I'm Player Negative, and let's get into it. First good thing to bring up about Disney is Mickey Mouse himself being in the public domain, specifically the older black and white version during the golden era of animation. Now, while you are stuck with some pretty strict guidelines, fans and other people have managed to create a lot of interesting art as a workaround from these legal guidelines. One in particular that caught my eye was a fan rendition of what Mickey Mouse would look like in the DuckTales 2017 reboot art style. And I gotta say, this design looks really cool because it looks very original, and you could almost consider this a separate character. While most Mickey Mouse designs try to stay standard to the three circles ears, the design with the body being a different shape was a really nice touch. However, little did I know, this rendition of Mickey Mouse actually was a reference to a much older series that Disney genuinely doesn't want you to know about. A series of old Mickey Mouse comics released during the 1940s. You see, around the time as Mickey Mouse was growing in popularity, he became some sorts of a role model, and due to the fact the movies were the main thing in the limelight, people wanted Mickey Mouse to be more clean, more brand safe, so to speak. You know, basically a lesser version of the crap that Disney tries to pull today. Meanwhile, around this time, a completely separate team that had a little bit more creative freedom worked on comic strips. Now, most of these comic strips took Mickey Mouse in a whole new light to a character who was a lot more fleshed out. Where the newer Mickey Mouse is seen as just some average, upbeat, shy guy, Mickey Mouse is more like an unsung hero in these comics, where he's willing to save people, but he also fights back and is willing to let his rage shine. He also was allowed to use realistic guns. Some of these comics were actually really interesting, however, there were a lot of controversial ones, like specifically, there was a set of comic strips where Mickey Mouse, due to a misunderstanding, thought Minnie Mouse broke up with him, and tried to commit saboku on multiple accounts. I am not joking. This was something that legitimately happened. And the dumbest thing about this is based on a live action film from a completely different crew that Walt Disney discredited. Because if you've seen that one game theory video, you would know that Walt Disney had a policy or a situation where they would discredit journalists from mentioning certain artists like Max Fleischer. So let me get this straight. You're okay with not letting other people have credit for things they rightfully made, but when it comes to stuff you made about Mickey Mouse doing stuff like this, you're perfectly okay with that? Walt, make it make sense. Our next character on the list is Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, created all the way back in 1927, back when a young, aspiring Walt Disney was busy working at Universal Studios. Now, around this time, they created the character of Oswald the Lucky Rabbit long before the idea of Mickey Mouse ever came to an idea. And Oswald was a pretty interesting character. He, just as many people assume, he does have the luck of a rabbit's foot. However, it's not always good or bad, and it can always end up either doing well for him or doing bad for him. The character was genuinely a lot more interesting than Mickey Mouse, because when Mickey had more of this purely hearted character with very little personality traits, Oswald was brash, a little bit harsh, but also ultimately was a good guy at the end of the day. Also in the video game that made his reappearance after several years during the 2000s, Epic Mickey, which displayed him as more of an inventor like Tails. To be honest, the character himself is actually very interesting that I wish people would use him more for stuff. However, due to copyright laws between Walt and Universal Studios, Walt was no longer allowed to use Oswald within his personal work. So he was forced to create Mickey Mouse. However, due to the lack of use of him in the present day, Oswald has become public domain. However, because Disney is Disney and they don't care about what they're trying to protect as long as they can keep it to themselves, they slap the trademark on his current design. You know, blue shorts, black body, the basic design. However, fans, and more importantly, this guy found a workaround by creating a design that anyone can use that looks a little something like this. A more angular design, his face having a chin bump, and him having the same black and white style with a more faded blue than the bright blue that Disney normally uses. I genuinely like this design, and I like what many people are doing with the character, animating him or drawing him in various different ways. Why is it when it's always the brother or sibling of the main character, they are always more fleshed out? Like, at this point, it's gotta be some sort of thing people do. It's like they say, once was an occurrence, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. But overall, what artists have done with him is a lot better than what I can imagine Disney could ever do with the rabbit. Next up on the list is Twisted Wonderland, which, unlike the other Disney franchises I've talked about, is an example of a partnership kind of like Kingdom Hearts. If Kingdom Hearts is Disney meets Final Fantasy, Twisted Wonderland is Disney meets Persona mixed with Danganronpa. Because this game, so far, is just really interesting. So, in this universe, or this world, or whatever you want to call it, the Disney villains actually are well revered by multiple different groups of people. And the school has different dorms or groups based around each villain. You play as a random person who was isekai'd and now is tasked with finding out the greater mystery of what's going on within this changed world. You meet different groups of characters who each represent different areas of those Disney villains. Kind of like how Hogwarts has those different types of dorms in Harry Potter. It's kind of similar. My personal favorite is the group who represents Scar because of what they actually do, and also just the design of how they looks really nice to me. The game also shares a lot of art style similarities with Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, which also gave me a bunch of dumb ideas of what if this random out-of-pocket series crosses over with Kingdom Hearts 4, which would be really funny and just really random, but then again, If Union Cross could do it, why couldn't this? Another thing about it is that later on, this random game ended up becoming an animated series, which I gotta say, it looks really well made. I'm not gonna spoil anything about the story because I believe you should check it out for yourself, and that all the characters are really well written. And I genuinely think it's a fun game. You should check it out for yourself. I'm Player Negative, and I'll see you later.